Hi, thanks for joining me. So today I'd like to talk about a potential approach for extracting script data from video games that are in the CD-ROM format. If you're familiar with my channel and my other videos, I talk a lot about dumping scripts from 8 and 16-bit games that all have their own text encodings. But with the advent of the CD-ROM, you have the opportunity to include much fuller Japanese character sets and to use just standard Japanese text encodings, one of those encodings being Shift.JIS. I don't know how widespread Shift.JIS use is these days. It might be all Unicode, I don't really know. But at least at the time, we're talking like mid-90s or so, a lot of the stuff I'm interested in, or the early 2000s, like PCFX or the Sega Dreamcast. Some of those games are going to have their text in Shift.js. Now, as I often say, somebody who has more technical knowledge about getting in and using emulator debuggers and things like that are probably going to be able to dump at least scripts that are more reinsertable than this method is going to allow. But me just being like myself and wondering how can I get at some of this script data in these larger games, um, came up with this approach. And I was thinking, if I just wrote a PHP script and have it scan all of the bytes and see if they match Shift.js encoded characters, I might be able to get something that is translatable, because that's kind of my focus and what I'm interested in. So thankfully this approach seems sound. Of course, it is going to have limitations. For instance, if the game does not encode its text in Shift.js, this is not going to work. If the script is compressed, which you might still do even with the extra space that there is on the CD-ROM format, this approach is not going to work. But I did, even you can see right on the screen here, I dumped scripts for, I don't know how many these are, like, maybe 15, something in the teens, number of games for the PCFX. So this was quite useful. So I just want to kind of show you guys the approach that I took. Now, this script here, S-JIS scan, is actually not completely my code. This is written by NightWolve. NightWolve is a hacker who has worked on games kind of in the fan translation scene for a long time, and he and I go back. We're kind of fan translation buddies. He is on our PCFX fan club Discord, so if you come there, you can interact with him and with me and the other folks there who are excited about the PCFX. But I was talking about this approach there, and he basically spoke up, was like, bro, I gotcha, and sent me this script. So you can see this is something that he had, written previously. This was dated, November of 2023. Obviously, he had the same idea that this might be a useful thing to be able to do. I think maybe more focused on PC Engine CD-ROM games, but yeah, great minds think alike, and yeah. So you can see here he has a few parameters that can be adjusted. So you can adjust how many Shift.js characters to match. So, this, if by setting this to 3, you're going to avoid getting just 1 or 2 rogue S-JIS matched characters coming out in your dump here, right? You could set this higher if you wanted, but you wouldn't want to miss things like if a line just said no, only, at 3 characters, you might miss out on that if it's just no, and then it doesn't, it has some garbage characters after it, so that, or at least that aren't Shift.js. So there's that. You've got max characters per line. You've got the repetition rejection. So if, like, you've got 10 exclamation points, this might reject that, but I think 10 is a pretty good number. You know, I basically left these all the way that NightWolve had it, and you'll see that I was able to get some good results from this. Now, the way that this worked was basically, you know, you open up a file, and then you basically just scan through all of the bytes, like I was saying there, and check it against Shift.js character sets. So these are kind of the functions that do that. Is it a lead byte? Is it a trail byte? Is it an S-JIS character? Kind of these functions here. And what I ended up doing, I did make some changes to this just because I wanted to do a few things a little bit differently. So one of them was just here, this used to be ISO. So with the PCFX, I ended up downloading some disk images in bin.q format that are split up by tracks. So if you look in here, like this is some of the stuff that I didn't really have much success with. You know, like I tried Blue Breaker. There's 2 tracks here. I tried Dokusei 2. There's like 8 tracks here, right? So we're probably going to want to scan all of these tracks and see if we can find any script data in them. So we've got like 8 bins there. This would be able to do that. I just changed this to bin. And it basically loads each file consecutively that are, you know, exist in your directory. So that's very handy. Now, I was having a lot of trouble with memory limits and timeouts. I don't know if this has to do with the version of PHP that I'm running. That's kind of like, in discussing with the guys on the Discord, that's kind of where we were leaning, because I have an old version of XAMPP with an old version of PHP running on my system in order to be able to run an old piece of software that I wrote, right? And I do have a newer version of XAMPP on my system with a newer version of PHP, but when I got this script, I just, you know, this Shift.js scan, I just dumped it in my like old XAMPP instance. So it's using the older version of PHP. Even the newer version that I haven't updated it recently, so that's probably years out of date too. So that might be why I was running into some of these memory limits and timeouts and things like that. But the way that I solved that is I decided to process these files in chunks. So I added, for instance, size here. I think NightWolve was getting the size just from the file size of the file, right? So I said, you know what, let's not do that. Let's get the size. It's going to be 100 meg chunks, and we'll just do it 100 megs at a time. In order to do that, I basically just had to add an additional loop that uses a second version of the file that just opens it, you know, and in 100 meg increments. And then, you know, it has a different counter for the chunks. And then it closes it, and then, you know, we basically just loop that until it's done, and then we just close the whole file, right? So those are the main changes that I made. NightWolve was also dumping this information as HTML formatted text. So I basically just said, let's not do that. We'll just do regular text, and it'll just be a regular text file. So let's see how this works. We're going to go here. Let's bring up the command prompt. So I'm going to go to XAMPP into the directory. Okay. So we're in S-JIS scan. I think NightWolve gave me a command to add PHP to the Windows path, and I have not done that yet. So thank you very much for that, but I just haven't done it yet. So what we're going to do, we're just going to do an absolute path, C XAMPP HT, no, not an HT docs, PHP / PHP.exe, and we're going to run S-JIS scan PHP. So what we have in here right now is I put 2 tracks from 2 different games, one track 2 from Boundary Gate, track 4 from Power Dolls. Just because I've done this before, I know that both of those have some script data in them, So let's go ahead and process those. Neither of those are over 100 megs, so it's only going to make one file for each of them. But if they were more than 100 megs, it would make multiple files, like I said, because I'm chunking that data. Let's go ahead and run that. We'll see what that does. So the way that NightWolve had written this to deal with multiple files is kind of nice because it you've got one here. Once it hits the next file, it's going to be two, and it's gonna basically print those out. I kind of had it do that here, and then for each of the files too, like this one's just spitting this out as Boundary Gate, Daughter of Kingdom, Japan Track 2 1, and it's going to be if there were another chunk, it would be number 2 and then number 3. It's just going to increment those. There's not going to be tons. The biggest a CD image can be is like 720 megs or maybe a little bit bigger. So there's that. So this is going to take a little while to run as it scans this entire file. Skip ahead here. I have done this already. So we get Boundary Gate, Daughter of Kingdom. This one is 531K of something, right? We hope that it's script data. And then Power Dolls at 49K. So let's go ahead and open this up. As far as I know, each PCFX game tends to start off, I think it's usually track 2, with this message. In fact, kind of this whole section here into Google Translate. So we'll just kind of see it's a copyright message. So it says the copyright of this program is owned by Hudson Soft. 1994, Hudson Soft, Boundary Gate. But what we really want, of course, is the script for the game. And thankfully, we're seeing some stuff here that looks good. This is clearly some text from the game. Put this in here. We've got, need more money, you don't have enough. I see, is blank amount of gold. Is this all right? Thank you. Which item would you like to sell? So this is obviously like shop text. If we scroll through this, we're going to get, more stuff. And this is good because this is what I like to see. Like when I dump a script from those 8 and 16-bit games, I basically get this stuff. And as long as I'm seeing Japanese text, I know I'm good, right? We get here and we've got some like garbage characters basically, right? But that's pretty typical. These obviously have matches in the Shift.js encoding, but it isn't actually like, text from our script. And you see there's some more stuff here. The main thing is we want to make sure, hopefully, that we're getting all of the text that we're expecting, right? What I like to do is go to YouTube, right? What I've got here is, thanks to Super Deadite, we've got PCFX Boundary Gate Ending Part 1 of 2. And I pulled this up here. I apologize if this is a spoiler, but we're just trying to figure out if we have all the text here. We've got this is saying something Kiraru anata wazato. So let's look this up. I might have this up here already because I was looking for it earlier. So we're gonna see if we get this in here. Look at that. Anata wazato kiraru. So Lisp is saying that. So that's great. We know that if we find text from the end of the game, then chances are we're good. It's easy to bring up a video that shows like the beginning of the game, and we can search and make sure that shows up in here. But finding the text from the end of the game means probably we have all the text from the game in this file, which is excellent. You will see here that it has what look like control codes. So if you've seen my other videos, we're used to those. Those tend to mark off end of lines, end of paragraphs, other certain things about bringing up different stuff. But if we want to format this, we can do a replace on this. I do have this set to regular expressions, so I can put in a regular expression, which also happens to start with a caret. So caret P is a paragraph, or in this case, a line break, which I think these M's are line breaks. So if we just replace all on that, so you can see this is formatted more nicely. This is more like what we're actually seeing on the screen. We get, this stuff and just do a quick check on it. There we go. Chiral, you did that on purpose. Thank you. Big sis, there isn't much time left. Hurry, the gate. Chiral. Okay, so it sounds very much like melodramatic text at the end of the game, but I have a lot more scripts now available that I could translate for the PCFX, and I'm pretty excited about that. Now, if you'll take a look at GitHub, I do have ROM translator under my scripts here. I have a public repository of these. Now, there are pros and cons to having this publicly available, but the main thing is that I just, especially after I had a data loss and lost the whole script for Oh My Goddess that I had translated, I want this stuff out there. Who knows what's going to happen to me? I might not be around tomorrow. Who knows what's going to happen where, there's a lightning storm and I lose data on my computer. So, this work that I've done, at least dumping these scripts, I don't even know if these scripts are necessarily usable, right? You're not necessarily going to know that until you actually sit down and start translating. You realize like there's some problem or it's missing half the text in the game or something like that. But chances are, because I've looked through and formatted these to the best of my ability, these scripts here probably are in decent shape. One thing I would ask as a courtesy to me, if anyone, you know, takes these scripts and starts working seriously on a project to, create a public translation patch for them, please just give me a heads up. Okay. For instance, if I started working on whatever, Sparkling Feather or something like that, and you started working on Sparkling Feather, I just don't want to, waste effort kind of duplicating effort on any of these. I think that would be sad because these scripts are pretty big. Um, so just give me a heads up, right? Keep me informed. I assume that there's some sort of way to contact somebody through GitHub, but if not, you can come to our Discord also for the PCFX fan club. This was, something that my buddy Ben started uh, for our PCFX Fan Club podcast. And we're not really doing that podcast right now, but we, definitely are still doing that Discord. So I can put a link in the description for that. But anyway, I just wanted to share this approach with you guys. Hopefully it can help you. This S-JIS scan script, I don't believe is something public. You might have to ask NightWolve about that. I didn't ask him ahead of time. I asked him if I could talk about it, but I didn't ask if he has provided this somewhere publicly. As far as I know, this is like his personal, thing. So out of respect to him, I wouldn't, I mean, I'm not going to share it, I guess, personally. But, this isn't rocket science. Like, you guys can program, a PHP script that does this, right? If you're, are a programmer or a program in a different language. The approach is pretty straightforward. It's just, I'm glad, as a proof of concept here that it functions, and it has generated scripts that I think will actually, help to maybe move some actual projects forward to get some, translation patches out there publicly. No promises on any of this. All right, this is not a promise that any of these are getting translated. Currently, none of these are active translation projects, but this is just something I wanted to do, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope you'll join me again next time I do one of these videos. All right, take care, guys.